Hello everyone, and let's talk about how you as an association leader can reset the association culture code in the generative AI era. Now, why does this even matter? Well, generative AI is definitely a very effective tool for improving member engagement and staff collaboration, improving the effectiveness of your staff and the volunteers and their ability to get stuff done, and efficiency, meaning using less labor to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And there are unique opportunities, but also serious challenges. Not adapting your culture is what leads to these challenges, because that's what leads to resistance to change and poor generative AI adoption. So what you want to do is make sure that your generative AI adoption is aligned with your culture, and that involves, of course, resetting your culture code. So here are the key pillars of a generative AI ready culture code. Collaboration across various boundaries. So generative AI can help bridge gaps among different staff with different departments of your association, different volunteers across your chapters and sections, and between your association staff and volunteers and your members. Having transparency and shared ownership among staff, volunteers, is going to foster collaboration and buy-in. Another pillar is inclusion. So make sure that the key stakeholders are really included in the innovation that generative AI can bring. Mitigate concerns around biases and diversity challenges, so include underrepresented voices, and make sure that your generative AI use is equitable through having effective training on equity, diversity, inclusion around generative AI, and feedback loops from underrepresented voices around the deployment of generative AI. Another pillar is ethical leadership. So you as a leader need to model fairness, transparency, and accountability, and set clear benchmarks for responsible adoption of generative AI. The last and fourth pillar is lifelong learning. So you want to continuously upskill your staff and volunteers, and to the extent that you can, your members as well, to adapt to generative AI advancements. So members, because you can provide them with workshops and trainings in your conferences, in your content, in your blogs, whatever you're putting out. And you want to build confidence in how they're using generative AI tools for the future in an ethical and responsible way. So here's a client case study where I worked with a national association to reset their culture code. The staff feared job loss, and volunteers in their ordinary everyday jobs also were concerned about loss. There was also skepticism about inclusivity and privacy from staff, from volunteers, from members as well. And so this cultural resistance hindered generative AI tool adoption. So what did we do? I gave some workshops to start to align the leadership first. Among the leadership, there was different segments and have different perspectives, and we aligned them on the benefits of generative AI and then how to implement them effectively. Then we made sure that the leadership communicated transparently to address concerns about privacy and job loss and inclusivity. Then we had tailored training for the staff and volunteers to empower diversity among them. Empower diversity, empower accountability, empower ethical use of generative AI, and of course technical knowledge as well. And then that knowledge propagated to the members because the volunteers facilitated some training for members as well. Then we had some feedback loops to get voices from staff, from volunteers, and from members to enable us to customize the generative AI tools that we were providing them and the techniques that they were using to the needs of the staff, to the needs of the chapter leaders, to the section leaders. We also had an AI ethics policy to make sure that everyone was happy and comfortable about the use of generative AI. Well, not everyone can always be happy and comfortable, but generally speaking, people were much more comfortable after we had an ethics policy and people saw that was being followed. So we had really great results. For staff who we could measure, there was a rise in productivity of 28% through task automation, more effective use. So that was an efficiency. They were quite a bit more efficient. We also know that we were more effective because chapter meeting engagement, so chapter meeting attendance, rose by 20%, and retention of members rose by 15%. So that was higher effectiveness, not only higher efficiency, that was by volunteers and by staff. And the association also saw itself positioned, saw itself reflected as a leader in the industry. So the industry that the association was part of perceived the association as a leader in generative AI adoption and thought leadership. So that's great. The chapters and sections were key to resetting the culture code. So chapters needed generative AI tools for member tracking, for event planning, and the training that we provided built confidence among volunteer leaders about adapting generative AI tools effectively. Then we had some demographic-focused specific sections to address specific needs. For example, women's sections had AI for closing gender gaps, for addressing those concerns, and international sections used generative AI for translation and collaboration. Now, how did we overcome resistance? Now, resistance stems from fear and lack of understanding. So we have clear communication to foster trust in the value of generative AI. We celebrated early success and shared positive outcomes, and we offered ongoing opportunities to build adaptability and customize generative AI tools to the ongoing needs of the membership. So that was the feedback loops. So think about being an industry trailblazer for your industry. You should set a generative AI standards for your industry, both within how you use it internally and the kind of content that you provide for your members, educational programs, articles, and so on. Create ethics guidelines and thought leadership resources, like I mentioned. So not only thought leadership, but ethics guidelines that organizations whose members are part of your association can simply copy for themselves. Have reinforced credibility for proactive generative AI leadership with new tools being developed. As they're being developed, you can integrate them and show how they can be useful for your members. Now, as you were finishing up, I want you to think about resetting the culture code for generative AI for your association to navigate the paradigm shift that we're experiencing right now. You remember the foundational pillars of collaboration, inclusion, diversity, and ethics. And there are plenty of growth opportunities if you successfully adopt generative AI and shift your culture to doing so effectively. If you have any questions, please email me at gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com. That's gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com. And please make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you get more videos like this.